For years now, the FBI has been telling us all that they had no presence whatsoever on Capitol Hill on January 6th. They weren't even there. They don't even know where the place is. And now a new Justice Department report finds out that that's not exactly true, right, Mercy?
You are so right, Chris. Just brilliant. Well, remember back in 2022 when the FBI Director Christopher Wray wouldn't say whether or not the FBI had confidential human sources in the Capitol on January 6th.
I have to be very careful about what I can say about when.
Even now, because that's what you told us 2 years ago.
May I finish? About when we do and do not, and where we have and have not used confidential human sources.
Or what about this past summer when he squirmed again when answering the same question?
I'm never going to be getting into when and where we have or have not used confidential human sources.
The Justice Department's Inspector General just did answer the question, noting that 26 confidential human sources working for the FBI were in fact in Washington that day, including 4 who entered the Capitol and another 13 who entered the restricted area. None of them have been prosecuted. ABC News, however, says this report all but vindicates the FBI.
This refutes, Kira, what we've obviously heard from a lot of people on the far right, including people like Steve Bannon, who have said that this was a Fedsurrection, in their words, a federally, funded and promoted riot where people who were part of the deep state were among that crowd cheering people on. And that is a direct tactic as a result of trying to shift blame, obviously, away from President-elect Donald Trump, who urged his thousands of followers to march to the Capitol that day, Kira.
Lies, 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 ABC News. Actually, he said to do so peacefully and patriotically. Amber, let me start with you. Does this report vindicate the FBI? It doesn't seem so.
No, I think it's really interesting, their language, too. They make very careful to distinguish between confidential human sources or informants versus actual FBI employees, meaning people who were officially on payroll and contracted and working for the FBI. But we don't know if these CHSs were indeed paid for the information that they were given. And we know that they did not face the same consequences for their bad behavior on January 6th that other people who were not affiliated with the FBI were. And we don't know if those individuals were part of actually encouraging the people around them to go into the Capitol on that day. So no, I actually think it does the opposite of indicate the FBI, not to mention if they were able to have so many informants on the ground on January 6th, why were they not able to properly defend the Capitol preemptively to prevent this from happening in the first place?
Not only defend the Capitol, but then if the FBI was already in there, why not have the necessary resources that, I know President Trump calling for the National Guard to be there, the Capitol Police not staffed up accordingly. Matthew Foldi, I find this to be very problematic because I think it does raise more questions than we do have answers.
One of those questions, I think, is interesting timing. And I wonder what this has to do with Kash Patel likely going into the FBI, where I think this is the sort of thing that he would want to get out there. So is this the FBI trying to front run a lot of the stuff that I think Kash Patel and people like that have made very clear are priorities of things that they're interested in finding out? And I wonder what else we'll see sort of coming out the doors of the final days of the Biden administration from, the Department of Energy, DNI, these things that looked into, for example, the origins of COVID, basically kind of saying that they knew it came from a lab, but not actually saying that with full confidence. So I think it'll be interesting, and it's sort of incumbent on us, because we know most of the media is not going to do their jobs, to be tracking what's going to happen in the final days. There's a lot of crazy stuff that they're pushing out that they're going to get a free pass on from people who are not kind of at this table. Maybe Jason will help us also look into it.
The FBI says no paid agents were at the Capitol on January 6th, but did admit they reimbursed one confidential human source who wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. The report finding, quote, as previously noted, we also found that another CHS who was not tasked with being in D.C. on January 6th entered the Capitol, and after January 6th provided information to the CHS's field office, including video footage from the Capitol. The CHS attended the inauguration and was reimbursed for the CHS's travel on January 6th and for the inauguration, and even though the CHS was only tasked with attending the inauguration.
Bye.